Hey guys, what's happening? It is Monday, July the 20th, and since it's been about 10 days since I did my first video on the Accurate Miniatures 148th b-25b, I thought, hey, good time to do an update. I've been doing a lot of construction work on it, and I've definitely had some time to start to decide how I feel about this kit and kind of what I'm in store for. So, seemed like a good time to do an update. I would say that overall, this kit is it's a really high quality kit, but the engineering is not very good. Now, you may say, how can this be? How can you have good engineering and be or how can you have good quality but be of lousy engineering? And I think that the simple answer is it's not Tamiya. Now, those of you who have built Tamiya kits know exactly what I mean. For those of you who have not or who are still confused, let me explain. Okay, so let's have a go at breaking some of this stuff down. The really high quality part of this kit is that the molding is just fantastic. As far as the detail goes, and little things like the placement of ejector pins, I think is really pretty good. This ejector pin right here is the only one that I've found that's really kind of in an area that's that could be visible, although it won't, because think about trying to look through the canopy this direction and actually seeing that. It won't be much of a problem. But look at the detail on this radio set right here. It's just fantastic the way that it's all molded in there. Really good. And things like the fit of these little windows right here, dead on the money. So there's not much to complain about with things like that. They certainly give you a lot to work with if you want to do a full detail job on the inside of the fuselage. I don't particularly care that much about it because I know that it's not going to be seen, and I know, heaven forbid, I don't care that much about details that aren't going to be seen. So I'm really just putting all this stuff in there to give the model a little bit of heft and to kind of have the full experience of building it so that I can give you guys a good report. Now, where does the lousy engineering come in? Okay, here's a really good example. There's just a lot of things that just don't fit very well. Take this part, for example. This is the bomb rack. Now, they tell you, for some crazy reason, not to put that part in there until after the two halves of the fuselage are joined. I chose to ignore that because, number one, it seems crazy. And number two, because it seems crazy. There really is no other reason. And it's a good thing that I did, because I've found out that they just don't fit worth a damn. And you can see I've got this one. I've got a hammer lock on this one while the glue sets up. And this is a perfect example of where they just really kind of didn't do a very good job. If you look at this part of the fuselage, you'll see that where these hydraulic lines run across here, they've got a groove cut for each one of the ribs in that bomb rack. And that makes perfect sense, right? Well, on this side, they neglected to cut the grooves in the hydraulic line. And so I ended up having to remove some material on the back of each of these ribs in order for it to clear that part and hopefully sit down flush. But even with that done, it doesn't conform to the side of the fuselage because the shape of the back of the ribs is just not correct. So if you are going to leave the bomb bay door open, which I probably am not, that's definitely something that you would have to pay attention to, because the fit is terrible, and you would definitely be able to see that. Okay, now speaking of fit and engineering, okay, take a look at, like for example, this little bit of the cockpit sidewall. That's a piece that you glue in right there. The detail is beautiful and it fits in there pretty well. But as I'm finding with a lot of this stuff, there's nothing that helps you locate that part. At least not very well. I mean, it's got a couple of edges that you slide it up against, and that kind of takes care of that. But this radio set that I was pointing to, for example, you just kind of have to figure out that you're in the right spot and make sure that you hold it there while your glue sets up, because there aren't any locating pins or tabs that sort of guarantee that it's in the right spot the way that you would have in a Tamiya kit. And in no place is that more apparent than in this subassembly right here. Now, this is the Bombay bulkheads and the add-on fuel tank that the Doolittle guys put in their aircraft, and then the portion of the interior that makes up the navigator's compartment. Now, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces. These sections here and here glue on to the ends of this section right here. And for things like that, again, there's no locating pins whatsoever. Same thing with this bulkhead and this roof or ceiling part right here. They just tell you in the instructions to make sure that you maintain the relationship between these parts at 90 degrees. There's absolutely no framework or any kind of engineering there to help you do that. So that's the kind of thing that makes it a bit of a higher skill level, and what I mean when I say that the engineering is not very good. Another thing is that these spars right here, these are for the wings. Now, these are the slots that those spars fit into. How those are really going to help you out a whole lot, given that it's obviously a loose fit, is beyond me. But hey, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Speaking of the wings, I've been spending a lot of time just doing body work. I've been fitting the engine nacelles, onto the wing halves, and just basically working my way around that joint, which has not been very good. It's really nice in some places, like this whole side. It's really a pretty tight joint. Not so bad on this side, but like right here where it goes around the front of the airfoil, there's a step there, and things like that have required a lot of work. It was really bad on this one. If you look right here, this joint had a huge step, probably 20 or 30 thousandths along the entire length of that joint right there, and I had to scrape that down with my beloved number 10 blade, one of my favorite things. And I'm working it with Mr. Surfacer 1000, which I'm doing because it gives me the ability to put it in there in a very controlled fashion with a small paintbrush, and then come back the next day with a Q-tip that's been dampened with lacquer thinner and rub off the excess. And you have to do that very quickly and very lightly, because pure lacquer thinner will melt styrene in a hurry, as most of you know. So that's definitely something that you got to be careful with if you want to use a technique like that. So it works, but again, it's just that's just part of the adventure, and that's kind of my focus on this kit, is making sure that the outside looks really good, because obviously you're not going to be able to see much of the inside. And I'm going to just spray most of this with the interior green and call it done. Okay, so that's a little bit of a rundown of where I'm at right now. I have to say that overall, I like this kit. All things considered, I think things are going pretty well. Now, again, all things considered is code for it's not Tamiya. I had relatively low expectations because these guys were a small kit maker. They're no longer around due to some financial issues. At least that's my understanding. And some of their kits or some of their tooling has gone to companies like Italeri and other places, so their moldings are still out there. And I think that overall they're pretty good. But like I said, some real obvious engineering issues that somebody like Tamiya would never have allowed to happen. But the detail is good. I was pleased to see that the length of the dingle arms was correct, and that they did in fact at least include a representation of the turbo encabulators. Now, as most of you guys know, those are two details that a lot of kit makers neglect, and that very few people really understand the significance of those items in the history of airplane engineering. So that's always good. Okay, now just a small bit of a waffle. I'm not given to ranting on YouTube, and I'm not going to start now. But there's some things that have been kind of flying around the community over the last week or so that are just a bit of a bummer. And I just want to say that I hope you guys are focusing on the work and having fun with building scale models, because that's what this is really all about. And not getting caught up in some kind of silly junior high nonsense and setting things on fire and just drama that really doesn't need to be there. All I care about is, can you build cool shit? Do you know tools and paint? And are you nice? That's to me, that's what's really important, and that's what keeps this community going. You look at guys like Gary Bottoms, Carlos Mendez, Hakan Gune. These are all guys that are just super nice, super talented, and never say a bad word about anybody, or really about anything. I think the only harsh word that I've ever seen Gary Bottoms say was with regards to Vallejo surface primer, and that right there ought to tell you something. If that's the only thing that can annoy him to the point of saying something negative. So, look, that's why I respect these guys, because they're super nice guys. They are some of the best model makers that I've ever seen, and probably the best in the world. And they don't get caught up in this kind of silliness. And I think that when I suspect, I don't want to speak for those guys, but I suspect that when they look out there in the community and they see some of this stuff going on, that probably does not engender the respect of guys like that. And I don't know about you, but that's important to me. So again, I'm not gonna dwell on it, but I just felt compelled to say that I hope you guys are focusing on what's important. I know that there's growing pains in the community, and maybe some guys doing more jobs than maybe is really feasible, filling too many roles. But overall, we have a fantastic community and a lot of good folks who will always give you help, and a lot of amazingly talented craftsmen. And I think we're all lucky to be a part of it. And I just hope that everybody can stay focused on the right things, and let's keep it that way. All right, guys, if you're still watching, thanks again. As always, I appreciate it. Much love.